It's Sunday, the 6th of August, here in Wakefield, Massachusetts, and we are highly honored and pleased to have with us Mr. Horace Seldon, who is a local historian of note. He's the founder of this Abolition Acre project that we've been talking about, and we're going to divulge some ideas behind the Abolition Acre project. And also, Horace has been a long-time activist in Boston, has worked with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, who came to Boston in 1965. And also, Horace has been long associated with the National Park Service in Boston. And let's turn it over and have Horace say a few words. What attracted you to William Lloyd Garrison? Some kind of role model for you?
What he'd said about the Constitution, what he said about the evil compact, and I just think that was so, and his clear prediction that things were going to be all right for the colored population, and I thought it was fine.
And you were attracted, I believe, to his stand on the importance of women being involved in the abolitionist movement.
Well, he was one of the first who got to know Marcia Stewart, and he much appreciated what she was doing and supported her work very clearly, and that was really quite remarkable because she was at that time the only woman, especially the only black woman, who was taking the kind of position she was taking, and he supported her. Marcia Stewart.
So speaking of Marcia Stewart, who are some of the other African-American luminaries in Boston that you've been attracted to, that worked with Garrison, and also, how do you explain Garrison's ability to work with the African-American community when there was a certain amount of reticence on the part of the community to work with white folks?
Well, he had the support of a few black folks, including Phyllis Riley, who was very, very supportive of him, and of course the black couple,
The Crafts?
yeah,
William and Ellen Craft.
yeah, right. Yeah. And he was very much involved with that whole effort. And of course, William Cooper Nell, wow.
The historian, playwright.
Yeah. And, of course, Frederick Douglass. You see, my latest thing is the speech in 1879 in Washington, D.C., where Purvis spoke, where Douglass was the chief speaker, and it was soon after Garrison's death, and they called it a memorial to William Lloyd Garrison. Now, what's important about that is, in terms of the history of those two men, of course, when Douglass became free, one of the first people he knew when he became free was William Lloyd Garrison. They became very active together. They went on speaking tours together. But then they had some falling outs. some disagreements. Some of that was over principle. Some of it, we're not quite sure what it was about. But came the war, and after the war, there was an attempt to bring those two men together at the re-raising of the flag at Fort Sumter. They were both there. And there was another occasion, I don't remember what it was, but they never were reconciled. Now, I believe in this event in 1879 in Washington, D.C., at the church there, I really believe with every fiber of my being that Frederick Douglass, who called Garrison the chief apostle for the immediate and unconditional release of all slaves of America. And I believe that on that occasion, when he said that, he was reaching across the death line and trying somehow to reconcile with Garrison. I absolutely believe that. It's absolutely remarkable. Well, he not only was a brilliant spokesperson, but there he was doing an amazingly brilliant act. And I really believe that's what he was doing, to reconcile.
So speaking of brilliant acts, you are responsible for digitalizing the Liberator Files, which is pretty substantial. They run from 18...
Actually, my son does that.
And your son helped out as well. From 1831 to 1865, if memory serves me correctly. And I'm wondering if there were a couple of issues, a couple of stories out of all those years that you would point out to community college students. What are a couple of the issues, not necessarily the chronological date of the issue that was published, but what were a couple of the outstanding social, political, racial issues that he covered that you would really point out to students?
Well, some of them are in Abolition Acre. There's no question about that.
For example, the Women's Freedom March there?
Well, yes. At Prison Lane, we celebrate the way the North Slope community led Boston in a just defiance of the 1850 Fugitive Slave Law and actions which led up to it. May 7, 1850, Webster, who was very much appreciated as a senator, made a speech in the United States Senate, and he did not endorse the Fugitive Slave Law, but neither did he oppose it. And if he had opposed it, I believe it would not have passed. President Fillmore signed it. And on that occasion, when he signed that, there were 2,000 people who fled from the Baptist church on Southwark Street, probably fled to Canada because they were scared to death what was going to happen to them. And by the way, Charles Sumner would never refer to that as a law. He always called it the Fugitive Slave Act. He would not give it the dignity of calling it a law. Oh, and by the way, my friend William Lloyd Garrison, when there was being a big debate about whether or not to erect a statue on the State House lawn of Mr. Webster, Garrison said it should be put on its face in the frog pond. That's what he said.
In all those issues that you've digitalized of the Liberator Files, did William Lloyd Garrison ever write about such women models as Mary Dyer or Anne Hutchinson or any of the predecessors, Phyllis Wheatley, for example, that came before that 19th century era? I'm just curious.
Sure. Well, I mentioned Maria Stewart,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was what was it? Elizabeth Riley, South Act Place, and yeah, but at least that.
What was Garrison's reaction to David Walker?
Oh, he says very clearly that he never met David Walker. And he issues a few statements in the beginning that he's a little concerned about some of the ways in which Walker spoke. But that doesn't last very long, and he becomes a very strong supporter of David Walker and his work.
So let's talk two more things. What recommendations would you make for students today to get involved in civic learning and civic engagement? A couple of issues that William Lloyd Garrison felt so passionately involved for the American population.
Well, there's sex trafficking, which is certainly still going on, and it's horrible. It's one of the worst forms of evil that I can imagine, and certainly demands a lot of action against it, sex trafficking. And then I think some of the ways in which Donald J. Trump is using language to basically keep people confused, always raising another issue that they have to look at while they haven't quite finished the other one, always pushing them forward, and it's a strain. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't know.
Any prescriptions to improve the racial climate in this country now?
I'm not sure I have a prescription for that. You know, my friend Derek Bell, at one point, wrote in one of his books about the permanence of racism. And I've written about that in several places. Accepting the permanence of racism does not really mean it's permanent. And I've written quite a lot about that. But Derek Bell was the one who got me started on that. And he, of course, was turning Harvard Law School upside down before he left and went to the West Coast and then came back to Harvard and Garrison was very close to him all the way. Or so I was. I mean, I was very close to him.
Well, let's bring this to a close with one other anecdote about a mystery, and that is a mystery about John Brown. Now, we had been talking earlier about a local historian, a couple named the Hortons, and specifically Lois Horton shared with you a copy of a letter regarding John Brown. You want to tell us that story?
Well, she got the authorities at Virginia to share it, and she was convinced them to share it with me. So they sent me a copy. I've got it. I can't remember.
And there's a line there somewhere about your deliverance is at hand.
Are delayed to the utmost your trial. Your delivery is at hand. Wow.
A month and a day before his execution.
Yep. Yep. And the thing that was equally amazing to me, that I found a different letter he wrote on the very same day, in which he's questioning, well, what did Brown think he was going to accomplish? And so it just raises again a mystery, and we'll never know the answer to that.
All right, well, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's good to be with you.